There are 9 seemingly harmless everyday plant care habits you may be doing that are actually keeping your plants from living their best life. And in today's video, I'm going to share them with you so that you can have awesome plants in your home that you can be proud of. And we're still gaining on Plant Arena, so hit that subscribe button to join the fun. Over time, the root ball of our indoor plants can become hydrophobic, especially if we keep them on the drier side like I do. What this means is that the soil is essentially repelling the water we give it because it is too dry, so it's very tricky to hydrate it. I know this sounds almost unbelievable, but have you ever watered a plant and found that the water runs or skids off the soil? This is an example of soil being hydrophobic. A cheeky little hack then to solve this problem so that we can get sufficient water to the roots of our plants is to aerate the soil before watering. This tip is so beneficial to the plant in numerous ways, and I highly recommend you do this regularly to all your plants. It's not that complicated. Take a skewer or something similar and stick it into the soil a few times, giving it a wiggle in the process. This introduces air into the soil, which helps in 2 ways. It provides valuable oxygen to the roots, a lack of which makes roots susceptible to root rot, and it allows water to enter and saturate the soil. If we water without doing this, there's a high chance that some areas of the root ball don't get sufficiently watered, leading to potential root damage further down the line. This is one of my favourite plant tips, and I highly recommend you start jabbing your plants. Don't worry about hurting the roots, they're far more resilient than you might think. This next habit really is a plant killer, and yet it seems so harmless. I upgraded my watering can last year to a 1.5 litre watering can that I bought from Amazon, and to my horror, it arrived with a rose head attachment. I mean, this thing is meant to be used to irrigate our indoor plants, yet they are providing a rose head attachment to provide a nice wide watering area so that all the foliage gets a good drench. Now, I know better not to use this attachment, but for beginners, this spells disaster for any indoor plant. When we water our plants, the best thing we can do is only water the soil and not let the leaves see a drop of water. Consistently allowing the leaves to get wet will increase the risk of rot and mould taking hold. You'll probably notice this if you own a Tradescantia and are heavy-handed with the watering can. The leaves are particularly sensitive and they rot and die within a few days. I know I've suffered this a lot over the years, even though I try to be very careful not to splash water on the leaves. It seems even having the leaves rest on wet soil is enough to do damage on this plant. Not all plants are this sensitive, of course, but they won't appreciate getting wet every time you water them. There is not enough air changes indoors to dry them out quickly enough. And I'll come back to this point a little later on when I talk about another bad habit. So if you buy a little watering can designed for indoor plants and it comes with a rose head attachment, do your plants a favour and lob it in the bin. It's the best place for it. Our indoor plants are lucky fellows that they come from the tropics and have grown up in lovely warm temperatures and bright light year round. Actually, maybe the fact they've been transported far and wide into our cold homes in winter makes them unlucky. Either way, your tropical plants really won't appreciate you if you subject them to cold temperatures. Anything below 10 degrees Celsius or 50 degrees Fahrenheit and your plants will get a strop on. Above 15 degrees Celsius or 60 degrees Fahrenheit is even better. Have you ever left an indoor plant outside in the winter? They really don't last long because they're really not tolerant of cold temperatures. The classic symptoms of exposure to cold temperatures is a sudden deterioration in the plant, such as discoloured or misshapen leaves, wilting or leaf drop. There are a couple of key areas of risk you need to know about and be vigilant of. First, when buying a plant at your local nursery, make sure the shop assistant wraps up your plant for transportation home if it's cold outside. Even just popping it in a brown paper bag will protect it from the harshest weather, and it should survive the journey home without any issues. The second problem occurs when we leave our homes for a winter break, turning the heating off, and leave our plants to fend for themselves in freezing temperatures. Whenever I visit my family at Christmas, I set a minimum temperature of 10 degrees Celsius on my thermostat to protect my babies, and I recommend you do the same. One of the worst pieces of advice I hear being given to beginner plant parents is to be consistent. They say to set a schedule to water and look after your plants so that you don't forget. On the face of it, this sounds like sound advice and does come from a well-meaning place. There are even apps out there that allow you to keep a watering schedule so that you never forget to water your plants. This leads folks to water their plant every weekend, but sadly, this is likely slowly killing their plant. Plants don't appreciate being put on a schedule. They're individual spirits. Blindly watering every weekend without checking the soil greatly increases the risk of overwatering your plant. I can get behind a schedule that says clean your plants every month or fertilize your plants every 4th watering, but overwatering really is a plant killer. At the risk of going on like a broken record, the best thing you can do is check the soil to see if it's dry before giving it any water. You can either use your finger by sticking it 2 inches into the soil and searching for moisture, or use my favourite plant gadget, the moisture meter. And mine is listed in my Amazon store, link below. I mentioned earlier that plants hate it when you turn the heating off when you go away for a winter break, perhaps when seeing the family for a week during Christmas. Something else they really hate is when you close the curtains for a week, depriving them of the light they need to photosynthesize. Don't get me wrong, they won't wither and die in a week while you're away, but they won't exactly be firing on all cylinders either. I know leaving the curtains open while you're away is a bit of a security risk, but something I like to do is choose a room in my house that is not too exposed to outside eyes and leave the curtains open in that room and then place most of my more sensitive plants there. And when I say sensitive, I'm talking about variegated plants in particular that are at risk of reverting to their original state when placed in the dark. So I don't actually have blinds or curtains in my dining room, so this is perfect for me to collect all my plants in my living room and bedrooms and place them here in my dining room while I'm away. It's great for them because they get to see old friends they haven't seen in a long time, or even get to make new acquaintances, and they'll have an absolute blast while you're away. Keep your plants in the dark while you're away though, and you'll have a mutiny on your hands when you get home. I've said a few times on this channel that you shouldn't mist your indoor plants because this can often lead to the build-up of mould on the foliage due to excess moisture sitting on the leaves. This often leads folks to ask, and quite rightly, why plants can do just fine when they get rained on, but suffer if we mist them every other day. The problem is that our plants are stuck inside. They don't have access to a gentle breeze like their outdoor cousins, so the rate of air change is far less. This means moisture tends to sit on the leaves for far longer than if they were outside, leading to potential mould problems. So this point really raises an important point, that good air circulation is crucial for our indoor plants. This is particularly true in the winter when we've battened down the hatches and protected ourselves from the icy winds. This creates stale air in our homes that just sits there and causes issues for our plants. So how can we help our plants here? Firstly, we shouldn't overcrowd our plants. This is easier said than done, especially when we have lots of them in our home, and it's something I'm especially guilty of. It's a good idea to give each of your plants their own personal space to promote good air circulation around them. This means not bunching 10 plants on your windowsill so they all live in close contact with each other. If you want to go the extra step and really give your plants that extra special feeling, you could turn on a fan for a few hours a day and give them wind in their hair. This really will lower the chances of fungus and mould taking hold. Something else that is probably keeping the majority of your plant collection unhealthy is constantly buying replacement plants for the ones that have died. Sometimes we buy a plant that we're super excited about and plonk it on a windowsill in our home. We think we're looking after it correctly, but it slowly starts to deteriorate until it eventually dies. Sad times. We write it off as one of those things, chuck it in the bin, travel to our local plant store and buy a replacement and do the entire cycle again. Doing the same thing time and time again and expecting a different result is the very definition of madness, my plant friends. And look, I have been guilty of this myself. I've lost count of the number of times I've bought my plant kryptonite, the Califea zebrina, and watched it die in my care. Instead of doing this, I really should have analysed what I was doing wrong, maybe watched a couple of YouTube videos, and then corrected my mistakes for next time. I've since learned that Califeas are highly sensitive to tap water, a discovery that has led me to treat my water with water conditioner, and if I discovered this sooner, or to save many a plant and myself plenty of money. Sometimes though, we just have to accept that something is not right in our homes for that plant. Maybe it doesn't like the light, the water, or the humidity. In which case, we should just accept our fate and not have that plant in our home. Plants are simple things and essentially need three things to not only survive, but to thrive. Light, water, and nutrients. It's that simple. Get these things right, and we're well on our way to having a happy plant family. The first of those you would have learned a lot about at school, light, and how plants use light to photosynthesize. An example I always remember from my school days long ago was my biology teacher showing us a plant that was placed in a dark spot with a patch of light offset to the side. You know what happens, of course? The plant bends itself in search of the light, and the class is all amazed. This very same phenomenon is happening in our homes every day, and we need to act to stop our plants getting all misshapen in search of light. You'll no doubt notice when you plonk a plant on a windowsill in your home, all the leaves will have turned to face the window where the sun is within a matter of days. This means your lovely new plant's foliage is facing away from the room, not allowing you to appreciate it. Leave it there for much longer, and you'll have a very uneven plant with heavy growth on one side and minimal growth on the other, darker side. Unfortunately, this is keeping your plant unhealthy, but the solution is simple. Turn your plant 90 degrees every few days so that the whole plant grows evenly. I do this every weekend when I check whether my plants need watering. I turn them 90 degrees and this keeps them looking nice and even. A bad habit that is super popular but also super bad for your plants is adding rocks to the bottom of plant pots as a means to increase drainage in the soil, and in this video here I explain why, as well as busting 11 other houseplant myths.